Hand washing with soap and water has been a central component of personal hygiene for many years. It may seem like common sense to most of us, and it has never been more important in the past 2 years. However, there was a time in the not too distant past when hand washing, even for the doctors, was not considered part of the basic hygiene, until one man raised the alarm. He was Dr. Ignaz Semmelweis, a Hungarian doctor born in 1818, who worked in the Vienna General Hospital. At the age of 29, he discovered that it was hand washing by doctors that could make all the difference between life and death. The discovery was decades before anyone knew about germs. Semmelweis began studying law at the University of Vienna in 1837. But by the following year, he changed to medicine for reasons no longer known by people. His medical career started in Vienna, where he started working in the maternity clinics at the Vienna General Hospital at the age of 28 when he received his doctor's degree. At the time, it was common for women to die from an illness contracted during or after childbirth, known as childbed fever, especially for those women who gave birth in the hospitals. At the time, people still had no knowledge about pathogens. They thought of illness as a cause of bad air or evil spirits. But in the 1800s, it's also a time that doctors started to have scientific training, doing autopsies and making arguments based on data, and Semmelweis was one of those doctors. He wanted to figure out why so many women in the maternity clinics were dying from childbed fever. Semmelweis started collecting some data of his own and studied 2 maternity clinics in the hospital. One was staffed by all male doctors and medical students, and the other was staffed by female midwives. When Semmelweis crunched the numbers, he discovered that women in the clinic staffed by doctors and medical students died at a rate nearly 5 times higher than women delivered by midwives. Semmelweis went through the differences between the 2 wards and started ruling out ideas. For example, the position that women gave birth, the appearance of priests, and ringing a bell. He literally scrutinized almost everything until the death of one of his colleagues. A pathologist made Semmelweis finally discover that the problem was doctors and the medical students often went directly to the delivery suite after performing autopsies and determined that hand washing could prevent the doctors and the medical students from passing on the illness. After Semmelweis initiated a mandatory hand-washing policy, the maternity rate for women delivered by the doctors fell from 18% to 2%, the same as it was for midwives. If you think Semmelweis' results spoke for themselves, you could be wrong. Despite the incredible empirical evidence in favor of Dr. Semmelweis' finding, it was rejected by the medical community at the time. The senior staff at the hospital believed that the infection was spread through the air by something called miasmas and attributed the low death rate to a new ventilation system. It's said that Semmelweis was not very tactful. He publicly berated people who disagreed with him, and he made some powerful and influential enemies. Later, he lost his job at the Vienna hospital, and the doctors gave up washing their hands with chlorine solution. Semmelweis went back to Hungary and got another job as head of obstetrics in Budapest, where he again succeeded at reducing mortality by insisting that doctors wash their hands. Even so, he kept trying to convince doctors in other parts of Europe to wash hands with chlorine solution, but no one would listen to him. In 1861, 14 years after his experiments, he published a book on his findings about how to prevent childbed fever, but it was poorly received by the medical community. Over the years, Semmelweis got angrier and eventually even strange. By 1865, after suffering a mental breakdown, Semmelweis was admitted to an asylum. He wasn't treated well at the asylum. He was probably bitten and eventually died of sepsis at the age of 47 after a cut on his hand became infected. There was various theories of what happened to the doctors toward the end of his life, ranging from beliefs that the mental decline was due to the rejection he experienced within medical circles, or that he suffered from early onset dementia. Decades after his death, with the development of the germ theory of disease and more advances in the field of antiseptics, Semmelweis' research was finally widely appreciated. On the 100th anniversary of his death, Austria issued a postage stamp in his honor. He is known as Savior of Mothers in Hungary, and the Medical University of Budapest changed its name to Semmelweis University. I guess by now you might have the same question as I did. Why was Semmelweis' idea not accepted at the time? If we Google the question, it seems many people have the similar inquiries. Even the historians have the different point of view. Some says back then people believed in the miasma theory. Semmelweis' idea was too radical. They refused to believe that a doctor's hand could transmit disease. On top of that, other Austrian doctors viewed their Hungarian-born colleague with suspicion and jealousy. Some argue that Semmelweis had a messaging problem. He couldn't seem to communicate why hand-washing solved the problem, and he simply didn't provide any convincing reason to win over his colleagues. One thing we need to be aware that Semmelweis was not the only one whose idea got rejected by the medical circle at the time. In 1843, the American doctor Oliver Holmes published a paper pointing out doctors with dirty hands could cause childbed fever in their patients. However, Holmes' paper was not well received by the medical community either. This indicates that the idea of doctors responsible for the disease was not so popular among the medical circle at the time. People could always find reasons to reject the ideas that might contradict one's own belief. We are human after all. There are a few takeaways from the story. Data visualization is really important to make the information delivered more effectively and efficiently. During Semmelweis' time, data visualization was just started. In his paper, we didn't see any graphs, charts, except several tables, because they were not available yet. Common sense is not common at all, just like hand washing is our daily routine, but it took a long time and effort to prove the importance in our lives. Doing the right thing and doing it the right way. To persuade others to see our visions, patience, and skills are needed. Otherwise, no matter how brilliant the idea is, it might take much longer time to achieve the goal.